What's up, everyone? Today we're going to be talking about how to increase your webinar show-up rate to over 50%. All right, in this video, we're going to be covering proof of results, the biggest problem with most webinars, 3 key strategies to skyrocketing your show rate as well. So if you're new here, my name is Marc-Anthony. I'm one of the co-founders here at scalingwebinars.io, and we've generated over $5 million for coaches, creators, and consultants using our webinar scaling system. All right, we've helped them, many of them, scale past $100,000, $200,000, and even hit $500,000 in a single month using these webinar strategies. All right, and I always like to show off with some proof. Here's one of our clients, $215K in October. One of our clients, $623,000 from one launch, and $1.2 million in an entire year using these strategies. So everything I'm about to talk about is what's working right now for our clients, not 3 years ago, not 4 years ago, not 5 years ago, right now, today. And I make these videos to share with you what's working, what's not working, and to eventually convince you to run webinars, because everyone needs a webinar in their business. So let's get started. So more proof. All right, so here is a case study right here. One of our clients before working with us, they had a 34% show up rate on their webinar and 1,800 attendees. After working with us, we skyrocketed their show up rate to almost 20%, having a 53% show up rate. So if you've ever ran webinars, ever, right, you know how much a significant jump like that in show up rate could mean for your business. And we're going to go over that. And he was able to book 133 calls from one single webinar for a $7,800 offer. Okay, so you can imagine how much money that he was able to make from that. So here's a real problem with most webinars. So most webinars, and people will tell you not to run webinars at all because they don't work. And I have news for you that they're completely right. Webinars do not work, all right? Because webinars don't work by themselves, right? They only work with an entire strategy, all right? Or else the thought process behind your webinar is just flawed, all right? The truth is most webinars aren't worth showing up to. Your audience has been hit with so many webinars. I watch about 3 to 4 webinars every single week just to keep in tack with the different strategies and things that people are doing right now so our clients can be more up to date. And your audience has been to multiple webinars as well. All right, in various different niches, especially in the make money online space. If you're a trader and you teach people how to day trade, they've been on an Amazon FBA webinar, a real estate webinar, a dropshipping webinar. They've seen everything. So not only is your webinar competing against the webinars in your niche, your webinars are competing with literally every other webinar in existence, okay? So if there isn't a clear, defined reason as to why people should even show up to your webinar, they simply will not show. All right, so let me put this into perspective of how important show rate is. All right, so this is a calculator that we use for all of our clients, all right? And we mainly run ads for our clients' businesses. Some of our clients run completely organic webinars, such as that one I showed you that increases webinar show up rate to 20%. All right, so let's take a look at this. So $10,000 in ad spend, all right? So you can use whatever this is for a metric of ad spend, organic, it doesn't really matter, right? So let's just say you get 1,000 people to register for your webinar, and 30% of them actually show up to your webinar. That's 300 attendees. If 15% of them schedule in a call with your sales team, 70% of them show, 35% of those deals close. That's $55,000 you're making from one webinar. Very strong, right? That's a great return. But what if you increased your webinar show-up rate just by 20% more? Then you would make $95,000, a $40,000 increase. And what if you would run this every single week? So that's 95,000 times 4, $400,000 in 1 month from one webinar using these strategies. Now, granted, these are really organic numbers. It is very hard to get 50% show-up rate on paid traffic. Okay, the highest show-up rate we've gotten on paid traffic is about 40%, 45%, I think was on one of them. Right, but 50% plus, we've gotten as high as 70% of people show. Organic traffic is your best bet with that. You're not getting that with cold traffic. Unless you have a never seen before offer that no one in the entire world has seen, then you can get something like this. But this just goes to show you how crucial having a high show-up rate is. Because arguably, this is the most important metric in the entire webinar funnel. All right? So if this metric was 10% and you close at 50%, you'd only be able to make $30,000 if only 10% of people showed, right? So it doesn't matter about anything else in your funnel. This right here is the most important metric on a webinar, all right? And we're going to go over exactly how you can increase your webinar show-up rate. So now that you know exactly why it's important, let's get into the 3 strategies. So strategy number 1 is the indoctrination email sequence. So emails, we've seen, have the highest effect on people showing up for our webinars, okay? So when someone registers to attend your webinar, you need to hit them with valuable emails that pre-frame them for your webinar and gives them content to consume before the webinar happens so they can become more educated, all right? Most webinar emails I see are just simple reminders. Hey, John, don't forget about us. Hey, Mike, show up to a webinar. No one cares about those emails. They will not read those emails, and they will not show up to your webinar if those are emails that you have. Okay, so there are 3 different types of emails that we like to use in an email sequence that we hit people with before the webinar occurs. So email number 1 is the decision reinforcing email. Okay, so I always like to use this example. So if you go to any church, all right, and someone gives their life to Christ, when they walk up to the stage and give their life to Christ, the crowd starts to clap. They reinforce the decision that they just made, all right, which makes them feel like the decision that they just made was, for the betterment of themselves, their family, and their future with God. Now, whether you believe in God or not, right, you can use this exact strategy for your webinar, all right? You need to reinforce their decisions, hit them with positive reinforcement for the actions that they just took, okay? So they generally need to be excited and congratulated for taking action for your webinar, all right? So this email you're going to use right when someone registers for your webinar to hit them with instant dopamine so that they'll show up to your webinar and move them along the journey of getting whatever outcome that you're promising, all right? The next email is the 0 to hero story arc, all right? So I love this email, okay? So you're essentially going to tell them exactly where you were and where you are now, and everything in between is going to be shown to them on the webinar. All right, so most people incorrectly talk about their story on the webinar. All right, so if you were to join most webinars, people just start talking about their story, how they came from nothing, how there's something now, X, Y, and Z. People do not care. People come up to the webinar for education, okay? We like to educate people on who we are, our story, our business before the webinar even happens. That way, when they come on the webinar, they're already educated about us. We don't need to come and sit on a 10, 15-minute monologue about who we are. That's not what the webinar is for. The webinar is completely just for education, objection handling, and to collect cash, okay? You should not be talking about yourself for 30 minutes on your webinar, okay? So inside of this email, you're going to share the journey of an inside look as to who they are. It should almost be like voyeuristic, okay? They should be able to look at this email and be like, oh my gosh, this is me. They're talking to me. This person is me who I'm reading right now. How did they know that I was dealing with all this? That's exactly how your email should read, okay? So authority building and objection handling as well, all right? So you need to pre-program people before they even attend your webinar. So most people think that only objections present themselves on the webinar when they're selling. And they make this assumption very incorrectly. Okay, so people who register for your webinar, they have 2 objections. They have an objection to buy, and they have an objection to show up. Okay, so before the webinar even happens, you need to handle the show up objections. Why the heck should I even show up to your webinar in the first place? Okay, so objections like, is this worth my time? Are they going to try to sell me something like every single other webinar has? Does this actually work? What's the proof that this actually works, okay? All of this stuff you can handle before the webinar actually begins to increase the likelihood that they show up to the webinar, okay? So if you don't handle webinars pre-objection, people will automatically assume this webinar is not worth my time, okay? So you want to imagine your prospects, the people who are registering for your webinar, as if they're a 5-year-old child. So I have a niece, and she asks me questions every single time I see her, okay? She's so curious about the world. These people are curious about you, your offer, and what you're trying to teach them on the webinar. Do not leave their curious minds unsatisfied. Satisfy the curious mind, okay? You need to answer every single question that they would have as it pertains to why should I show up to this thing, or else they simply will not show, okay? They will not be satisfied unless you answer their questions, okay? So that's strategy number 1. Strategy number 2 is engagement traps. So after someone registers for your live webinar, you need to trap that traffic in a medium that's easy to communicate with. Okay, so you want to think about it like you're controlling an environment, all right? So there's an ecosphere, okay? People register for your webinar from ads, from YouTube, from Instagram, from content, from Facebook groups, whatever it is. You want to house this traffic in a controlled environment, somewhere that's easy for you to communicate with them and low friction in order for them to join. This allows you to send additional resources, reminders, and increase the overall frequency that your webinar is seen. You need to increase the frequency. Hit them with so much frequency. One of my favorite marketers to learn from is Jeremy Haynes. Shout out to that guy. And even Grant Cardone talks about this as well. People can buy. You can almost force people to buy by sheer frequency alone, by just showing up in front of their face every single day. It may not seem like a big deal, but this shows consistency. This shows that you're more legit than everyone else, right? That may be hitting them with marketing material, and it just allows you to stay top of mind, okay? So these are the different engagement traps that we like to use, all right? And I'm gonna talk about my favorite to my least favorite. So my favorite is Instagram broadcast channels right now, because almost no one is doing it. So it's perfect if the majority of your core audience is on Instagram, all right? So you want to post daily content inside the broadcast channel leading up to the webinar. And what's funny is also, because they follow your broadcast channel, when you send them broadcast messages, you can also have strategic stories put up as well. That way they can watch the stories, okay? Because if they're going to be on your broadcast channel and get notified when they get a broadcast message, they're going to click on your stories as well. All right, and they're going to consume even more content. You just want people to consume the sheer frequency as to which you exist in the world. People need to get hit with so much content. All right, so pro tip, you can go live inside of your broadcast channel. It won't go live to everyone on your Instagram, just to your broadcast channel, okay? Which makes the live feel a little bit more intimate. All right, and it's an even greater form of like reminding people, okay? So I prefer this over Facebook groups right now, but Facebook groups are my second favorite go-to, okay? So this is perfect for an older audience. I would say 30 and up, really, right? They're the people who are most used to using Facebook. For much younger audiences, I love Instagram broadcast channels. Even for older audiences, they work well, but the younger audience tends to work best for Instagram broadcast channels. Now, WhatsApp groups, I've seen these work extremely well. Iman Ghazi, he did this for one of his challenges. It's best for international audiences, right? So if your audience is mainly American, this doesn't work as well from what I've seen, at least, because Americans really don't have WhatsApp downloaded on their phones. And another reason I don't like this is because you need to download another app that people just may not have. So the likelihood that people have Instagram and Facebook on their phone is so much more higher than the likelihood that people have WhatsApp on their phone, right? Obviously, I mean, you can just check. There's more users for Instagram and Facebook, at least inside of the United States, okay? So WhatsApp group, really good for professionals, business owners. A lot of business owners use WhatsApp, right? And it feels a lot more like direct communication. Instead of Facebook groups, which is like a forum, right? That everyone can kind of talk to each other in, and then Instagram broadcast channels, it's one-to-many communication as well. All right, so engagement traps is strategy number 2. Now, strategy number 3 is the pre-call setter system. All right, so I hear almost nobody talking about this at all. And I was personally shocked when I first heard about this, and we started implementing it in one of our clients' businesses. So one of the best ways to directly get a hold of people, besides text, emails, engagement traps, all those good things, all right, is by just simply calling them, all right? But the tricky part is, how do you incentivize your team in order to do this, right? So, you know, that they'll dial thousands of people without setting them up on sales calls, all right? So I like to structure this based on performance. So for example, if you know that if one setter or if the setting team increases your show rate by 20%, and you will make an extra $15,000 based on math, all right? So we always like to do math for everything, all right? So if they make you an extra $15,000, is it unreasonable to give them 5%? It's not unreasonable. And they will do it, okay? So this is by far the most labor-intensive strategy, but besides emails, this has been seen to have the greatest impact on show up for your webinar because you're directly talking to people, okay? So here's exactly how you want to structure that setting call system, okay? You want to remind people about your webinar, all right? So a friendly reminder 24 to 48 hours before the live event. You want to reaffirm their decision. You want to touch on pain points, and you want to confirm that they have the link. This is so important because you do not understand how many people just lose the links to their webinars, okay? So you want to confirm that they have the link. If they don't have the link, obviously, you want to send it to them, okay? So that's strategy number 3. Strategy number 3, pre-call setting system. Strategy number 2, engagement traps. And strategy number 3, indoctrination email sequences. So I hope that you got a ton of value out of this. If you use all of these things, you will increase your show up rate to 50%, especially if you're running organic traffic. If you're running cold, right, you could definitely increase your show up rate to 30, 35, even as high as 40% using this strategy. All right, so comment down below any other questions that you guys have about webinars. If you guys like this video, for sure, give me a thumbs up, comment down below so I know what more videos to make to help you scale your coaching business to 6 figures, to 7 figures as well, like our clients have. All right. So if you want the system installed for your business, or if you want to hear about how we scale our clients to multiple six figures per month using our webinar systems, just schedule a call down below in order to speak to our team. And we can't wait to talk to you about your business and help you scale to the next level like many of our clients have already. All right. So this is Marc signing off. Go get a little bit richer today. I love you guys. Peace. Talk soon.